Presentation of Valentina Voйтенкова. You can see the topic of this presentation. Valentin, the screen is yours.
Thank you. So good evening, dear colleagues. I would like to present to you the results of my research, impact of COVID-19 on household consumption in Russia. So let's get started. And you see the research motivation, yes? Are the slides changing or not?
Yeah, everything's okay.
Okay, thank you. On the slide, you can see the motivation of the current study. I would like to comment on each of these aspects. An important aspect for examining the structure of consumer spending in Russia is the fact that the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, is calculated on the basis of modeled expenditure shares. Basically, the understanding of the determinants of consumer spending will provide more accurate estimates for inflation, like in other study or by Eurostat. Researchers have noted that consumers are changing consumption patterns in face of increasing economic uncertainties or crisis. Essentially, their response of households to uncertainty is a change in consumption patterns. Therefore, an analysis of different population group is required, as the effect may be also asymmetric between different income groups, for instance. The crisis associated with COVID-19 pandemic is of a different nature, and the results sector of the economy that have not experienced this crisis before, so like the services sector was being one affected. So, and the last thing, the last motivation aspect is that basically the space do matters. So the impact of crisis is asymmetrical across the different territorial formations or entities. Zubarevich notes that cities with a high share of services were the most exposed entities during the pandemic crisis, while regions with a low share of the services sector did not feel the impact of this crisis. In addition, the current study examines the impact of the pandemic on consumer spending in regions with hard and soft quarantine measures. On this slide, you can see the research objective and the task. So basically, the research objective is to assess the change in the determinants of consumption patterns in Russian regions under the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. On the slide, you can see the research task, but I think I would like to spend more time on research hypothesis. Basically, I have stated three hypotheses. The first one is about that the consumption structure, consumption patterns, and distribution of average values will vary during the pandemic and pre-crisis and post-crisis periods. The second hypothesis is about the severity or rigidity of pandemic restrictions. So my hypothesis, my assumption is that the rigidity of pandemic restrictions has a significant impact on the consumer structure or consumer patterns. So, and the third hypothesis is that consumption patterns has changed as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. The next slide is about literature review. On this slide, basically as a part of my research, I examine not only literature related to the impact of pandemic on the consumption patterns, but also the determinants of household spending in general, as well as microeconomic literature on modeling the share of spending on certain goods and services. The current study is notable for its novelty in the aspect of studying Russia from regional perspective, as most authors focus on cross-country analysis. The existing literature notes the importance of social characteristics of the households. We can see it from the study of Young. We see that the age, family structure, and family income are significant determinants of the expenditure change. So that is why we can basically use these variables as like our controls. The RAM study notes two possible scenarios for the impact of the pandemic on alcohol consumption. According to the author, each scenario depends on individual household characteristics. It's noted that during pandemic, the decline in the non-food categories and services was the most dramatic. Now about also continuation of literature review, but now about different studies. So the Demeter study shows that households have changed consumer behavior in response to the pandemic. Basically, it was stated also in motivation part. In addition, it's noted that different consumer groups respond asymmetrically to the impact of the pandemic. My study attempts to fill a gap in existing literature by combining analysis of the impact of the determinants of consumer spending patterns and the impact of COVID-19. So, and it was conducted on the household level in Russian regions. So it's micro level analysis. On this slide, you can see the database description. This study covers the period from first quarter of 2019 to fourth quarter of 2021. Household budget survey data, more than half a million observation, and more than 112,000 unique household are used. The distribution of household by year is also presented on the slide. We consider a household whose average expenditures is more than 400,000 rubles and less than 1,000 rubles to be representative, and we excluded as statistical outliers. So the methodology used includes two statistical tests and the ordinary least squares method with robust standard errors to address heteroscedasticity problem. The independent variables are grouped for ease of understanding, and three groups are identified. The first one is social characteristic, and its number of children and educational attainment. The second one is financial characteristic, its household income, share of gross and financial assets, savings, etc. And the third group is about the impact of the pandemic. Basically, it includes dummy variables for 2020 and 2021, and dummy variables to estimate the rigidity of quarantine restrictions. We will consider in more detailed way in 2 minutes. But before this, I would like to tell you more about our dependent variables. In this study, we consider 5 categories of household expenditures: for food, for food out of the house, non-food, alcohol, and services. The slide shows the average values of the dependent variable in 2019, 2020, and 2021. In 2020, there is a significant decrease in the category food out of the home and in the category of services, which is basically quite logical outcome, with a simultaneous increase in the categories of food and non-food. At the same time, there is a slight decrease in the food category in 2021. The share of expenditure on alcohol is practically unchanged over the study period. And also, here I would like to mention that during the pandemic, the change in the average values in the distribution of consumer expenditures change more dramatically than in 2021. So in 2019 we had a trend. In 2020 this trend was changed, and in 2021 the overall picture, I would say, in 2021 is quite similar to that we have in 2019. Now about empirical model. The slide basically show it. This model is based on the model from the lesser study. It's a microeconomic approach. It represents one of the simplest model, as we do not include price for categories of goods and services, which is basically endogenous variables. In the next stages of the work, we would like to complicate our methodology and include prices of goods and services in our model. Importantly, the basic research model allows for modeling exactly cost shares. A similar approach was used in the article by Ratnikova and Berdnieva, and on the slide you can see the detailed description of the independent variables. We measure the impact of aspects of pandemic using dummy variables, and we will look at them in the detailed way in several slides. But now this slide shows the described statistics of the variable used in the model. We find that the standard deviation of indicators is not high in absolute values. In addition, we used the logarithm of the income to smooth the high absolute values. I think it's better to use exactly logarithm for income. It represents also, this slide shows the distribution of mean values over the period of 2019 to 2021, and this graph is basically the same that we have 2 slides before. And I would like to elaborate on the share factor indicator. I don't know whether you see my mouse, but it is at the, I don't know. You can see it, you can find it on the table on the slide. So it represents the share of growth in financial assets in income. Financial assets can increase as well as decrease. Figure above 1 means that the increase was higher than the household income in that period, and basically it could be like 2 situations. If this value is very big, if it's higher than 1, it is could be because of the lottery winnings, or if this value is less than 0 and less than 1, -1, it could be because of the high losses on the stock market. Now about COVID-19 aspect and quarantine restrictions. So we used quarantine restrictions as explanatory variables. We used 2 dummy variables. Hard quarantine, it's dummy variable for regions with strict quarantine measures, and soft quarantine, dummy variable for regions with soft quarantine measures. So basically, the aim of the current work is to assess the impact of the pandemic on household consumption patterns. In addition to overall effect, we consider the rigidity of quarantine restrictions. The severity of quarantine restrictions was estimated based on the article from the Vedomosti newspaper. You can see the link just here. So we identified 30 regions with strict quarantine restrictions, 43 regions with medium quarantine restrictions, and 21 regions with soft quarantine restrictions. So in the group of middle quarantine, I included the regions that are not in the group of hard or soft quarantine. On this slide, you can see the map of quarantine restrictions in Russian regions, basically. The color darkens and the rigidity of quarantine restrictions increases. It can be seen that the far east of Russia is dominated by medium hard quarantine restrictions. In contrast, Yakutia, Buryatia, and Irkutsk region have implemented the most stringent quarantine restrictions. In contrast, in Krasnoyarsk and Tomsk, pandemic restrictions were minimal. And here we can also see the Moscow, St. Petersburg as federal cities with hard quarantine. To the results. The results of the t-test and Kolmogorov-Smirnov test showed that the mean value of the share of alcohol consumption does not change in 2020 compared to 2019, while for the other variables, the means and the distributions are not equal. Consequently, we can observe statistically significant changes in the average consumption shares before, during, and after the pandemic in Russia. The results of the test demonstrate that the shares of expenditure have changed and also indicate the direction of change. In fact, we observe the same picture as can be seen in the pie charts, so in the previous slides, and we see that in 2020 compared to 2019, the share of food expenditures has increased, as well as the share of expenditures on non-food goods, and we see that there is no differences in distribution and mean values in alcohol expenditures. However, the expenditures on food out of home and services are significant and negative. So these shares were decreased. And also we can see the comparison for 2020 and 2021 and 2019 and 2021. Now let's consider the first econometric model. It's made for the 2019-2020 sample. Estimates are obtained by least squares method using robust standard errors. Time effects and regional effects are included in the models. For convenience, the variables are grouped for ease of presentation, and each variable has a dummy variable next to it, multiplied by a specific indicator, in order to estimate the effect of the pandemic on the variables. The most interesting indicator are income, education, and the severity of the quarantine restrictions. Increases in income stimulate spending on out-of-food home, alcohol, and non-food items. It's in general. In contrast, we observe a 7.5% decline in the share of spending on food, with a 1% rise in income, which is consistent with economic intuition. The intersection coefficients quantifying change during the pandemic. We observe an increase in expenditure on food, alcohol, and non-food items as income rises in 2020 compared to 2019. As education increases, the share of spending on out-of-home home food, non-food and services increases, the share of spending on food decreases. The rigidity of quarantine measures has a significant impact on the distribution of spending shares. However, the ratio tends to be higher in absolute terms under the strict quarantine measures compared to the soft quarantine measures. And we can see here also the observation number. It is almost 400,000 observations, and R square, which is not that high. And the next model, the direction or the determinants or signs of the slope coefficients in the two subsamples in 2019 and 2020-2021 remain the same, although the estimates of the coefficient have changed. So I mean the absolute values of the coefficients. However, in the 2020-2021 subsample, we observe a decline in expenditure on food, non-food, and alcohol as income increases. This effect may indicate a quantitative change in the structure of consumer spending during the crisis, but consumer patterns remain unchanged. Education growth has a similar effect as in the 2019-2020 subsample. The rigidity of quarantine measures has a significant impact on the distribution of expenditure shares. In contrast to the previous model, the coefficient for soft quarantine is higher in absolute terms. In addition, the impact of soft quarantine measures remained similar, while the effect of hard quarantine restrictions has changed. And the third model is the model for subsample 2019-2021, and in the current study we need to consider this subsample. It's necessary in order to draw a conclusion about household behavioral patterns. In fact, the overall results and the lack of the change in the impact of indicators suggest that despite the crisis, consumer patterns have remained unchanged. In addition, it's interesting to know the small number of significant coefficient in assessing the rigidity of quarantine restrictions. This could suggest that the impact of the severity of quarantine measures in 2021 has diminished. The impact of other indicators remained unchanged from the previous models. And here we can also see, and I would like to compare the R-squared values between these subsamples, and we see that for food it's about 24.5%. For out-of-home food it's about 10%. For alcohol it's 5%. For non-food goods it is about 19-20%, and for services it's about 15%. Now to the conclusion of the study. So basically we support the first hypothesis because household increased spending on food at home and significantly decreased spendings on food outside the home. The second hypothesis is also confirmed because we observed a significant effect of the rigidity of quarantine restrictions on expenditure categories, and we can partially confirm the third hypothesis because household behavior patterns remained unchanged during crisis. So basically we see the same results in the I think it's more convenient to use as an example education level and incomes, for instance, for food category. And we see that in each model, the effect is the same. Only the absolute value of the coefficient has changed. And the main findings can be seen on the slide also. And we divide it in three groups. The first group is about the effect of income on the consumption patterns and the consumption structure. And we've seen that wealthy households have a different consumption structure. So with rising household incomes, the share of expenditure on food and services decreases, while the share on food outside the home, alcohol and non-food items increases. The second group of our findings is about the education of the people. And we see that the share of services in the expenditures of better educated household members tends to be higher than in the poor ones. And the third group is about the rigidity of quarantine restrictions. In each model, we see that the impact of the quarantine restrictions and its rigidity is significant. And also we see that it could be different for soft quarantine, for regions with the soft quarantine and for regions with the hard quarantine measures. So this is it. Thank you for your attention. I am happy to listen to your suggestions and comments.
Thank you very much, Valentin. Please, questions, comments, remarks, proposals, how to improve this research?
I have some comments and suggestions, but I think that students can make their comments first.
Dear students, your proposals, remarks, questions?
Okay, if no comments, then I can start. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Valentin, because it was really interesting and well structured. So I see that you paid attention to literature review and you showed a good work on data. Could you again explain what was the data source first? The unit of observation.
The unit of observation was one household, and the data source it is from Росстат, and it is the household budget survey, or in Russian обследование домашних хозяйств.
Okay, I understand. So it's a representative over Russian regions, if I understand correctly.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. But it's not a longitudinal study, it's a cross-section, right? So it's a repeated cross-section.
Yeah, basically it initially I would say it is in cross-section, but we made an unbalanced panel data.
So you say that one household is observed for maybe 2-3 periods.
Yeah, basically the household didn't change during 1 year. So, for instance, if we consider only 2019, we will have the same number of household in each quarter.
Yes, that I understand. How many times into 1 year they are measured?
You mean they are asked to
Yes, they interviewed. Is it
for
one round or several?
for times?
Okay. So it's a quarterly data,
Yeah.
and they are partly panel, partly not panel. Within a year, it's a panel, then it changes, right?
Yes, but in some cases, the household could be the same during 2 or even 3 years. It's possible.
And what is the share of households that are observed for 2-3 years?
I tried to estimate this number, and I think it is about 2,500 households.
Okay, so it's not much actually. So
Yeah.
it doesn't change, I would say, the design of the studies, that you can't explore, for example, panel data regressions because no panel actually exists until you do it like on a regional level. Now I understand it better. Well, it's interesting. And my first question is, how did you decide to divide consumption into 5 groups? What drives your choice?
It is basically methodology of Росстат, and Росстат define the household expenditures as a whole, so the overall consumption expenditures, and these expenditures in these expenditures are included 5 groups, and it is just a sum of food, non-food, food out of the home, services, and alcohol beverages.
Okay, so I think it's very important to make a comment on this, because I would rather expect that the structure on food expenditures within food expenditures changed. For example, people were more likely to buy cheap stuff instead of expensive one, because they were not sure that they will have guaranteed income in future. So this you can't observe, right?
Yeah.
On this data you can't do it, but maybe Russian longitudinal monitoring study can help to answer this question. But here we can't do it. Okay, thank you. Talking about your literature review, it's very interesting that you have mentioned results from Africa, from North America, from developed and developing countries. How did you choose those papers? What was the criteria?
It's the paper should be about the consumption and the estimation of effect of the pandemic crisis on the consumption patterns or consumption structure, or like expenditures of household in general. And
Yeah,
I really
did you take into account what was the journal publishing results? Was it credible, let's say?
So I think the top field journals, I don't know the reasons, but they don't like the topic of pandemic, I think. So that is why there are almost no papers in high quality journals considering this topic.
So you acknowledge the problem that the results may be not credible. Okay, I can't actually put anything in chat, as I see. I have found at least 2 papers. One is from American Economic Association, high rated, first quartile, and from National Bureau of Economic Research. Well, I think I will send them just by email. Okay, that's done. Next question was, you compare distribution of consumption, and you give us, for example, picture with t-test and Kolmogorov-Smirnov test. So what exactly do you report there? Is it a p-value or something else?
It is a p-value, and I'm not sure that you can see it, but at the bottom of the slide, I have small notation.
In such a case, why not reporting the difference with, say, stars that would show the p-values? Because it's interesting to see how big is the difference. Well, at least in percentage points. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, that's very good point. Thank you.
Excuse me, Elena Stanислava, excuse me. Do you propose to add 2 distributions? Yes, in this table, if we have a difference. Am I right?
No, I just suggest that you you can put here the difference itself between the groups and give to that difference, as we usually do, standard error and significance in stars.
So you recommend us at not only sign of difference, but also standard error of this difference. Am I right?
And the difference itself, the difference, how much, the percentage points. That's interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Because look at 0, well, zeros are zeros. It's not really interesting.
Okay. Thank you.
Next, my point is about testing the hypothesis about soft and hard rigidities, where the soft rigidities, middle quarantine, were most significant in all your estimates. But when you showed us grouping the regions, you showed that this group is the largest. And definitely, the largest group dominates in the estimates, because what we estimate is the mean. Therefore, first of all, we more accurately estimate the effect for those who are larger in the number of observations. That's why middle quarantine, soft restrictions. Middle. Did you do their middle or you did not? They were only 21 and 13 regions. Could you explain what did you show in the estimates? The lowest and highest, or the highest and the average, the middle?
Yeah, I would like to start from the fact, like what are these dummy for rigidity, and hard quarantine means that it's dummy variable, and 0 means the absence of hard quarantine restrictions, and 1 implies the existence of hard quarantine restrictions. So for soft quarantine, their logic is the same, and We included as dummy variables, and I'm not sure whether it's possible to define from this table the value, the effect for the middle quarantine regions.
No,
And
it's not what I meant. I mistakenly decided that middle quarantines for the largest group are at present, but now I see that the smallest groups are actually presented with their dummies and with estimates. So these are the highest and the lowest restrictions. Okay, and they are more or less equal in the number of observations, although soft is slightly larger than hard. 13 regions for the hard and 21 for soft.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the reason why you see many results to be significant for the soft quarantine and less significant values for the hard quarantine.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe, but yeah, that could be, I believe, tested, for example, by weighting the groups. Okay, well, maybe it's not a problem. And something to add. Something I believe dropped from my mind. So descriptive statistics on distribution of consumer expenditure categories. It's slide 9. There, I think it's the most interesting to see development over time, to see descriptives for the panel data. Is it possible to do?
What could you please elaborate what do you mean? I think
you can make descriptive statistics for the total set, and you can make descriptive statistics for, first of all, parts of the set, like soft, middle, and so on. But you also can make just XT sum, which is a panel descriptives that shows evolution over time and will show you overall variance and within variance. Within variance will show some whether there were changes in certain variable.
Yeah, now I get it, and I think it's really good point. And as I stated in Stata software that my data is panel, it's possible to conduct XSM. I think there will be no problem with it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, otherwise I like your model and it seems that it should work. Well, in the model itself, slide 8, the question is, do we need time? Do we need time index there, or we don't need?
Let me.
IJR. You write here IJR, but not time, and you have panel data.
Yeah. Okay.
And some actually parts contain T, like gamma Tj times Qt.
Yeah, I see. Thank you.
Okay, otherwise, very good. Thank you. Was interesting.
Thank you.
And good luck with further studies, with further findings.
Thank you very much, Elena Stanislavna, for your brilliant proposals how to improve this research. Dear students, maybe you may add something how to improve this research, your ideas.
Hello. Actually, I think it is very intriguing research, but maybe I have a question that, as we all know, the household consumptions maybe have the two things can change it. The first is the people will change their values, then will deductions, and then will increase their desire to buy more things or less things. But another factors may be the inflation that are the price changes. As I know you use some way to remove the price changes, but I also know in your models you use the shares, but I think that you make some subgroups, for example the folder or the non-food goods on the servers, but maybe I think the price the price change will be heterogeneous. It will have the different change rate. For example, the food maybe will increase. The food price maybe will increase, but some essential servers will then the price will not change. So I don't know how do you deal with these problems. Could you please introduce the detail? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. May I elaborate the question? Your question was about do we need to include the prices in this model?
I think the price changes will be the heterogeneous. They will different. They will different across the commodity. Then will be different in different the kind of the things. For example, the food or the non-food goods and the servers, maybe the price change will be different.
Okay, and your question is like,
if I understand correctly, Venture suggests to include price changes into the model.
Yes.
Yes, and thank you. And here is an important point that if we it's basically quite microeconomic approach, and this is very good. We will include the price change in the in the continuation of our work, but the thing is that prices in this model will be endogenous variables. So, and we need to use quite sophisticated, I think, estimation techniques to address the endogeneity in this way.
Maybe Valentin, you don't need to include prices because prices are universal for the region, and because you take fixed effects for the region, they disappear.
There is an opinion that the including of regional prices is not that correct, just because the consumer basically choose their prices for itself. So my choose as a consumer like to buy milk for 100 rubles or for 17 rubles, and we understand that for these categories, the changes of price will be also different. It was this idea was basically in the study of Екатерина Бернеева and Tatiana Ratnikova. So I just think about it. So.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I add that Valentin used, as you can see, basic income of the same year. So we can compare this income for 2 years, for example. I understand it's future plan of Valentin to develop this model, but it's the most similar model without prices. But of course, I agree with your proposal. It makes sense, of course. Please, other questions, comments, proposals?
Yeah, I would like to ask, here many dummy variables are employed in the model. How does it affect multilinearity? Did you test for multilinearity?
I think it's drawback that we didn't test for multilinearity and we didn't present it here. So yeah, we will do a variance inflation factor and correlation matrix, of course, to see. But I think that there was no problem. Just if we consider the results of the study with multilinearity problem, I think we will have like more problems in estimations. If this problem is contained in our model, I think we will have a lot of differences between subsamples, but actually results are quite consistent, and we see it in 3 ways in 3 models. So yeah.
Talking about subsamples, so you made some robustness check, but you didn't present it. Am I right?
In this study, we consider 3 subsamples, and the first one for 2019-2020, the second one for 2020 and 2021, and the third one for 2019 and 2021.
So you didn't actually change the set of households, you just change the time. Well, maybe it's worth to try to somehow shuffle households and regions that come into your model. And also, it would be more, I think, illustrative if you put in one table all estimates concerning food, all estimates concerning out-of-home food, and so on. In such a case, you would see that the results are robust or not robust. Right now, we don't see it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Please, other questions, proposals? If we have no other remark, thank you very much to Valentin and all the participants, and especially Elena Stanislavna and John for very interesting proposals. I think it's very useful for Valentin. If possible, could you switch on your camera for drawing photo?
Unfortunately, I have not installed it.
If it's possible, okay?
Well,
Of course, not necessary. Thank you.
So it's okay.
Thank you. Only for whom it's possible. I understand. Thank you very much. I guess it's possible switch off recording if you agree.